What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast. If you are new to the podcast, I just want to welcome you. My name is Steven. I'm the host here, and I'm glad that you're here. This podcast is really a space where we dive into some real and raw conversations about life and faith and finances and everything in between. But today, you're in for a treat. We've got a special episode. Today, we're going to be joined by one of my friends. His name is Easton Stick. He is the backup quarterback for the LA Chargers right now. And this conversation is a lot of fun. He's going to talk about a little bit about his NDSU career. He's going to talk about his journey in the NFL. He's entering year 6. He's going to be playing for Coach Harbaugh right now. And his perspective, his story is really interesting and really great. But also who he is incredible. He is a servant leader. He's humble. And you're going to learn more about that today. And I'm just pumped. If you do not know Easton, I am so happy I get to introduce you to him today. So let's jump in to this week's episode with Easton Stick. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today, I am joined by Easton Stick. What's up, Easton?
How we doing, man? Good to see you. Good to talk to you. It's been a long time, and so looking forward to it.
I know. It has been a while, but I'm pumped to have you on. This has been like a year in the making. You know, we tried
seriously.
We tried to do it mid-season, which was just a rookie mistake on my part. You know, that's a little busy, but here we are in the off season. We're getting it done.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. Where are you right now? Like, what's the off season looking like for you right now?
Yeah, in Southern California. This is kind of, in a way, become home a little bit the last 5 or 6 years, and so I spend most of my time here. And we started the off-season program with Coach Harbaugh and the new staff 2 weeks ago, and so we're kind of transitioning from as much free time as you could ever imagine, in the off season to a little bit of structure. They kind of, it's like when you're a little kid, like you first started going to school, and it's like you go for a few hours, then half the day. And that's kind of how they treat us. They phase us in. So we're only in there for a few hours, in the morning before lunch, and but getting a lot of good stuff done, and then it'll kind of progress from there. But just kind of enjoying my time, and I really do have come to really enjoy living out here.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's kind of like, when your friends all go to school, like, they're in the different town and they go 2 weeks later than you. And so your summer comes to an end and all your buddies are still like, hey man, come on.
No doubt. Yeah. We were joking about it. There's a cool group that trains out here, in the off season. And because we have a new head coach, we go back 2 weeks early than everyone else. So it's that exact situation. I'm on my way out, and guys still got 2 more weeks and are hanging out at the beach and relaxing. So, but it's good to be back and see all the guys.
That's awesome. Well, for those of you or those of our listeners who don't know you, do you just want to give us a little background? Who is Easton Stick? What do you do for work? All that fun stuff. Could probably start with that, but we just got right into it.
Grew up, born and raised Omaha, Nebraska. It was me and my younger brother. We played sports and went to school. It was pretty traditional, growing up, and played anything we could get our hands on in the front yard, and all of that. And then really fell in love with football particularly, and that took me to Fargo. Got an opportunity to play there at North Dakota State, and man, that Fargo really became home. I grew up, learned a lot about who I was, and met some friends that, that are family to me to this day, and always will be. And so that community is really special to me. And, was able to kind of parlay that into an opportunity to play with the Chargers and be out here in Southern California, and going into year 6. So super grateful, it's crazy. Time has flown. It's gone really fast, but really grateful to have been with one organization and one spot. It's been a fun journey, not one that I could have mapped out or drawn, but been a lot of fun. And so like I said, I'm really enjoying my time out here.
That's crazy. This is year 6 already.
Yeah, it flies. It really does. I feel like people always say that, but when you think about just the amount of stuff that went into it, and just hoping, like, I was just praying and hoping I'd just get an opportunity. And then you blink and shoot, I've been here as long as I was in Fargo, probably actually a little bit longer at this point. And so, yeah, it really is crazy.
How has, with that being said, you've been there longer than you were in Fargo. And so how is that adjustment to LA living? I mean, I remember when you first got out there, the kid from Nebraska who has a stop in Fargo, North Dakota, just throw him into the
Mhm.
deep end. But how's that adjustment been? And I know you said earlier that you've really like grown to love it.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It was full send, jump off and close your eyes, figure it out. It was such a culture shock. Just with the pace of life is different. It's busy, all that stuff. And I actually came out here to train with my agency pre-draft and was probably 5-10 miles from the Chargers facility. And I remember landing when the Chargers brought me out after the draft and like going to the facility and being like, I've never seen any of this. I was out here for 3 months and had no idea. And so just like, your world is so small sometimes. But like I said, the people are great. I've obviously blessed to be in a locker room. And so you've got a little bit of built-in friends and some relationship, but I've been lucky to meet some people here that are local and aren't involved with us, and so that's been great. Kind of becoming part of the community and in different ways, and so yeah, it's just a different pace of life. It's exciting. The food is great. The weather obviously is great, and so there's a lot of perks. We don't have the 6-month winter that you just kind of become accustomed to and living there.
Do you miss it?
I miss it for like 48 hours, like
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
like go play a game in Kansas City or Denver at the end of the year and it's like 30 degrees and like, oh man, this is awesome. Like I miss this. And then on your way out, you're like, I don't miss it that much,
Yeah, and you land back in LA and you're fine again.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You kind of get
There's a
the
time
best
and
of
a
both.
place for everything.
That's true. That's true. I think one of the cool things too, is obviously you are doing a job that a lot of people, at one point in our lives said, man, wouldn't that be cool? We're all like 6. I want to be an NFL quarterback. But what was that like when you were 5, 6, 7, 8? Like when did it kind of pivot from I'm just one of the kids who's just having fun to like, man, this is something that's real to me?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was always just drawn to it, and not necessarily football. I just think competition in sports, like whatever season it was, that was my favorite.
What was
It
what
didn't matter necessarily.
what other sport was like your pinnacle sport?
Really, baseball growing up was like the sport that if looking back, I would have said that would have been the one. That was my favorite.
Okay.
Um, and you travel around in the summer and you're playing games every day. Like you can play it in the front yard. Like this is what I wanted to do. But it was at some point in high school where it just like the unique aspect of football, particularly just from my perspective, playing quarterback, like where you're just involved with the whole team, every aspect of it. It's such a diverse group. We were joking the other day at one of the workouts and just looking at two guys that play the same position that like body type, personality, where they're one's from Montana, one's from South Carolina, like couldn't have looked any different personality wise. And they play the same position in the same sport, so it's just like you bring people together from all over the place and everybody's got a different role, and I just think was really drawn to that portion of it. And then obviously just having the ball in my hand, like getting a chance to compete and kind of run run the system that way. I don't know. At some point in high school, really fell in love with it, and like I said, just really fortunate. I ended up in the perfect spot. Like, I always say, like, I don't, who knows if I'm still getting to do this if I don't end up in Fargo, and was around the people I was around, and so really grateful for all of that.
Yeah, I feel like that spot and just being in Fargo and just seeing the legacy of the quarterback position over the last 12 years now or whatever it's been since, I mean, obviously there's guys before Brock, but Brock was kind of like the new era guy that kind of kicked it all off. But, I was thinking back to when I first met you, or when I first more so like knew of you, because I followed football and we recruit this kid and he's in, but you're the backup. You were behind Carson, obviously, that first year, and then Carson got injured. And, you went on kind of a killing spree, 8-0, led the team to the national championship. And I just remember like the humility that you displayed of handing the team back over to Carson. And I just think that's a very rare scenario when a guy goes 8-0. I think most times, like in the NFL or anywhere else, you go like, let's ride the hot hand. Like this is clearly something's working here. But what was that whole experience like to kind of lead the team there and then to hand it back over to Carson?
Yeah, I don't, to be honest, like I never thought of it much. Like it just made sense to, that's how we did things. It was like I came in and, you try to learn from the guys that are older than you that have done it, and had experience, and you try to follow them, fall in line a little bit, and you just understand really quickly that it's not about yourself. And when everyone kind of has that attitude, like collectively, you're just so much stronger. And that's in anything, but particularly football. And so, yeah, I mean, Carson had done so much for me. There's no way in heck, as a freshman that I could go out there and play as well as Carson, as a fifth year senior. But he had poured into me a ton, helping me kind of get up to speed in that year prior, before I had to go in. And so, I owed a lot to him, and a lot of the things we did were because of him. And so, it wasn't anything really I did. I went in there and I handed the ball off, and we played really good defense, and kind of got hot. But no, it was just like I said, you just kind of fall in line. You realize it's not about yourself. This was the best thing for the team. And knowing Carson's story, with having to sit and wait for an opportunity to play. Here it is. He takes advantage of it the first chance he gets in 14, and then the next year, with so much on the line, obviously for him professionally, all of that, gets taken away so quick. And so, obviously we were all aware of that. And, the timeline worked out perfectly where we kind of knew once he got hurt, like, hey man, this might just be enough time for him to be able to come back if we can get there. And obviously it wasn't a guarantee at all. And we were able to get it done. And like I said, it just made sense. It wasn't about any individual, any person. And so it's a neat story, because I think it kind of encapsulates the program as a whole, what Bison Pride is. And so, yeah, grateful to be a part of it.
I feel like that culture piece, no matter, where we find ourselves, we go into work, we are part of different things, whether it's through a church, through a family. Like, I think that culture piece that you've talked about, at NDSU, it is so special. And like the fact that you guys were mapping out, like, okay, if this all falls into place, we win out, we do all this, Carson gets back. Like, it was others focused. It was not about one person. Where did that come from? Like, was that something that just kind of came natural to each group that you were a part of, or what was kind of the catalyst for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for me personally, with my parents and how we were raised, and I don't know, my mom tried to keep it really simple, and I can still hear it like as I walk out of the front door, in my parents' house growing up, is like, just be nice. Like simply,
Just
be
simple. Yeah.
nice. It's really simple. So I don't know. I think probably just ingrained that way, as a kid, but getting to Fargo, and like I said, a lot of guys poured into me, and spent a lot of time, getting to know me, and building a relationship. And I think that was a time where my faith grew a ton. And so just kind of seeing like I said, just seeing the example, of what obviously what it says, but then here are people that believe, and this is what it looks like, and it is unselfish, and you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And so I think between those two things and then just the culture that was already set within the football program, man, like I said, it just made sense. It was just what you did. You sacrificed for the greater good, knowing that good things will come from it.
That's powerful. I mean, like that's like visible from the outside, and then just getting to know the individuals that, are kind of part of your story, a part of this bigger picture story. It is cool because I feel like everybody, like you said, comes from different walks of life. They come from different, not everybody's mom stood at the doorway every day saying, be nice, and instilling those values. Yet, I think like culture is contagious. And when there's people that buy into something and they carry it out, and they intentionally look at the people around them and say, hey, let's do this together, something really kind of beautiful can happen. And I feel like that can translate in any environment. But you mentioned how faith kind of came alive to you in college. Like what kind of was the catalyst for that, and just kind of how did that impact your life? What kind of tangible impact did you feel like it had in you?
Yeah, I think like the turning point for me, because we grew up, I went to Catholic grade school growing up, and we went to church, and I had experiences in high school where I was like, this is real. This Jesus thing is real. Like I've felt it in my heart. I've had experiences to know that, but what does it actually look like, and what does it mean to me? I don't know, and so yeah, I think you mentioned like being intentional, and people were intentional with me. Carson, one of them, Cole Davis, Jeff Curtis. There's a ton of people that just like showed really cool leadership, and honestly, like you looking back on it now, like being like Carson's 21, 22 years old. Jeff Curtis has a doesn't even have a family yet, a new wife, and he's like spending all this time like with some 18-year-old kid, teaching him, what it means to be a Christian. And so, I don't know, people were just really intentional with their time, and then I got to see them and how they interacted with others, and it's just who they were, and you could tell the way they lived their life. Like, man, this is a real thing. It's really powerful. And so for me, learning who I was aside from sports, aside from school, all that stuff. It was really the first time where I realized, my identity does not come from how well you play in the game or what you did in school. All that stuff is just a part of you, and can become a really cool platform and an opportunity to showcase, your gifts and talents, but by no means does it define you. And so, yeah, it was really the people, it was the community, I think, that poured into me that made a huge difference.
That's cool. I mean, I think that identity piece is so huge for anybody in any walk of life, because whether it's in what we have, or we can put it in our possessions, or in our position of like how people treat us, or where we are in an organization work wise, or if we have kids, if we don't have kids, like all those things can kind of become the identity that we carry. And I mean, I think just seeing that in your life, where I feel like it started to click in the sense of, man, I want to be good at football, I want to win. It's not an excuse to not be good and to not try, to not
Mm-hmm.
practice, but there was there's an unlocking that takes place in us when we go, man, like I'm still good. Like I am still covered, I'm still loved, I'm still chosen and beloved, no matter what the outcome of this game is, or this thing is.
Yeah, 100%. I think you said it, the unlocking piece, I think, was really real for me. Yeah, you said it's not like, oh, I don't need to try as much. It's the exact opposite. It's like, oh man, I want to try so much harder. I want to, do everything I possibly can, to be as best as I can, because that's what we're called to do. We're called to take our gifts and talents, and go out there and have an impact on people. So if anything, yeah, it fired me up a little bit. And then it also gives you the freedom to, I don't need to be, and I'm saying this as the way I feel, but understanding that like this is a huge challenge, right? Like
Yeah.
daily, to not be consumed with whatever it is. You mentioned family, work, it doesn't matter. Like it's just so easy lose sight of that and to put your worth somewhere else. But ultimately, like, yeah, it did free me up a ton to like it. Yeah, winning and losing matters, but it really doesn't matter. And so you don't need to be afraid. Just go do your best, work hard, and impact people, and see where it takes you.
For sure. And your first 5 years or 4 years in the NFL, you were kind of strictly backup. You got a little action. Was that your rookie year? You kind of got
My second year,
second
yeah,
year.
very brief action.
but it was action nonetheless.
Yeah.
You got to run wild in preseason every year you've been there. But this year, obviously, you had new opportunities, and you got to start the final four games. And, obviously, that's a big deal for anybody at any place, no matter what the standing of the team is at that time. But what was that experience like when first you learned, like, hey, we're going to roll with you the rest of the way? And then just from that point on, what was that like?
Yeah, it was really exciting. There were a lot of, parallels to the story we talked about earlier with Carson, where it's like, it's not you want the opportunity to play, but not in that way.
Right.
Justin and I have been teammates for 4 years, going to be 5 years now. And so we got an awesome relationship. I love working with him. And so you're crushed,
Yeah.
for him. And the season hadn't gone the way we wanted it to at all. And we were in a tough spot. And so all those factors, it's like pulls you, both ways a little bit. But like ultimately, I was just so jacked and excited for the opportunity to play. Like it had been so long. Like I said, it wasn't getting to this point. It certainly, in my brain and in my personal plan, it didn't look like this.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I didn't realize how much I missed playing. Truly, like I love what I do and being a part of it and all of that. But there's no better feeling than getting to be out there and compete
Yeah.
and go try to win with a group of guys. And so yeah, it didn't go the way we wanted to, certainly. But I'm like I said, really, really grateful that I had that opportunity.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, I feel like a couple of your games, at least two of them were primetime games too. And so it kind of worked out, for us North Dakotans that got to turn on the TV and see another one of the guys that we know. But it was, yeah, I do remember so I have a buddy, he has a golf simulator in his garage. And so we've kind of done this like little group where we on Thursday nights we hit some golf balls and watch Thursday night football. And I believe it was the Raiders game that was on Thursday night football.
Yeah.
That it was like
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. You should have hit more golf balls that night, dude. It was not much to watch there, unfortunately.
We
And that's
didn't.
like what I was saying, it's just
Yeah.
you wait so long for this opportunity, and then you're like, man, this is not what I expected, not even close. And so I don't know, but like you just I don't know. Ultimately, like the feeling is gratitude, even through like situations like that, like I said, we all have these, or at least I do, get in my own way a little bit of like wanting to have it all planned out and mapped out. And you realize like, I don't know, God kind of laughs at you and it's like, that's not how this works, type deal. And that was probably one of those. Is there's always a lesson in there to take a step back. And so that was certainly one of them.
What did you feel like? You said there's probably a lesson. Like what's something that you took away, not just from that game, but like, and not that the end of the year was all a disaster either. Like you guys, it was a unique spot for your team as a whole. But what did you kind of take away from all those experiences, that Raiders game, all that compiled together?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I left with was, one, don't take it for granted. Because I got the opportunity because it got taken from someone else. And so just a reminder there, like, don't take this for granted, especially being back in the huddle for the first time in a long time. I was like, man, I really love this, and none of this is guaranteed for me at all. And so don't take it for granted. And then two, the other thing was, the group stuck together. The Raiders game was ugly and it was bad. And things happened in the front office with the coaching staff. And then Giff Smith kind of was the intern the last 3 weeks and really challenged guys to like, hey, like we got 3 weeks, let's do our job, come together as a team and work hard and do it the right way. And you saw people do that. And guys had no reason to. We were out and it was a mess and coaches got fired. Everyone felt terrible. You all feel responsible for it. And so that part was neat. It was like, man, this stuff, like connection to people, like to a team, that stuff is real and it still matters, even at the professional level. And seeing the last 3 week guys came together and played 3 close games and played hard to win. And so just being a part of a team in that way was really neat and just showed you, the power of connection.
That's cool. That's really cool. I feel like no matter what, negative experience we have, like there is always a lesson. And I know that's been countless times in my life, whether it was job changes or moving across the country and having a pandemic hit like 6 months into the move, all those. I think we probably moved around the same time. I think you became a NFL quarterback during COVID too. So like there's just things that don't go as planned and they don't look the way that you thought they were going to look. And, in the moment, it's hard. Like in the moment, you walk away from it and you go like, okay, how could this work out for the good? But then you get some time away, you get that perspective back and you really do see, like the Bible talks about how God works together all things for those who love him, but also like the story of Joseph, what the enemy meant for harm, God used for good. And I think there's so many things in my life when I think about it that God's brought good out of the negative situations. And I feel like I've seen that in your life too, that any adversity you've come through, it's made you stronger. And I think that's a huge, like valuable asset to carry with a person.
Yeah, like I said, I'm certainly grateful for kind of the route it's been, the journey it's been, and I said it already, but like, yeah, you set out as a little kid and this is what you want to do, and in your head it looks a certain type of way. It doesn't look like being the backup, or fighting for a job, in training camp. Like that's not the hero story, right? That you're in,
Right.
and so like I said, I've learned so much being in this role, and being in different roles on different teams, and having different experiences that. Heck yeah, I'd love to play, but I certainly wouldn't go back and change what I've learned and what I've experienced.
It makes you who you are. And, I think that's powerful. And also, you talked about, I think a lot of us do carry kind of that hero perspective when we live our lives and live our stories. But I think one of the most powerful things that when we can realize that we're not actually the hero, like that,
Yeah,
that either like for a faith perspective, we recognize like, no, like God's the hero. He's the one that comes through. But just in general, like my life isn't about me. It's about what I can offer other people and serve other people. And I feel like you do that well. And, you've been in this role as a backup, fighting for your job. You're with a quarterback who's just an absolute stud. It's not like you're walking into the training camp, this week going, all right, this is my job. I'm going to win it. I'm taking this kid down. Like you're going in with a unique perspective, a unique position. What have you learned just from kind of that adjustment of kind of navigating, all right, this is my new role. This is my job. How do you go to work and just do your best and bring your best? Like what's your goals every day?
yeah, it's funny at NDSU, we talked about servant leadership all the time. And I had one particular perspective of it, because I got to be the starter, and I got to be one of the leaders of the team. And then you get here, and I've had a totally different role, primarily. And so seeing the other side of what that looks like, and not necessarily being at the front of it, being somewhere in the middle with the group and leading in a new way, but ultimately with the same goal is like, man, I want to have an impact on people, and I can do that by the way I work and the way I treat people, and trying to have connections with guys and lead them individually, and hopefully that grows, and you have an impact on the team, but it just looks a little bit different. Like I said, you're not at the front of the room, or driving the bus. You're, like you said, you're somewhere in the middle, and trying to just build connections with guys and be real, be authentic. But ultimately the goal is the same, right? Just to impact people and just be positive daily.
For sure. And I think that supportive role is a place that, there's no NFL athlete that doesn't think they should be playing and doesn't know that they could be playing. Like, you recognize, your ability, and, and no offense to the NFL, but there were some guys playing quarterback for significant chunks of time last year that you're like, man, are they the best 32 right now? But like, I'm just on the couch watching on Sunday, so don't look at me. But you just think of, like, what you have in you, and you don't get to the NFL by just kind of being passive and just kind of being like, well, whatever happens, happens. So that pivot, I think, is probably easier said than done. But what has kind of helped you, kind of navigate that role, and especially within just your relationship with Justin? Like, how do you approach that aspect?
Yeah, for me, it all comes back to the people. And I go back to, like, my rookie year. It's Phillip Rivers and Tyrod Taylor. And so you said it, it's like, yeah, no one gets here thinking they shouldn't play. But when you walk in and it's like future Hall of Famer and the backup's a Pro Bowler, you're like, yeah, okay, I see what coach is saying. Like, maybe I shouldn't be the one out there. Like, I get it. But it was neat for me because I got to see Tyrod, who was a Pro Bowler a couple years before, get signed in to be a backup. And what does that look like for him? And so I watched closely, and he was awesome, and kind of just let me, follow him around and copy his routine and just be a part of it. And throw me tidbits here and there, on different things, and kind of gave me the blueprint of what it looks like. And so, like I said, and I was around awesome people there. We bring Justin in, and Justin's one of the hardest workers I've ever been around. Like, perfectionist to his core. Like, wants to do it right, wants to do it well. Sees it as a responsibility.
Right.
Being a franchise quarterback and all that means. And so I've just been around great people, and it's like, man, it's easy to go to work behind someone when they want it just as bad, if not more than you do. And they do it the right way. He treats people the right way in the building, treats his teammates, everybody in there really well, and has a relationship with people. And so I feel a little bit fortunate and lucky because I've been with such great people. It's like, man, this is easy. Like, I can work with you. Like, heck yeah. Like, let's go do this thing together. And he has the same mindset. He doesn't see me as like the little brother, like nagging at you or somebody trying to take his spot. He's like, man, you can help me. Here's how. And so that's been really cool for the two of us to kind of grow together in that way.
That's awesome. As you're talking, I'm thinking of a book. It's called The Secret Society of Success, and I think I actually have it. Yeah, here it is. So this book, I actually got to interview this guy on the podcast. His name is Tim Schurer, and he just talks about like how like success is in the assist, and he tells all these stories in this book about like how the first moon landing. Obviously, here I'll ask you the question: who were the astronauts on that first mission to the moon?
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you Neil Armstrong, and that's where the list ends.
Yeah, well, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, you probably got that one. Then there's this third guy named Michael Collins, who he never got to go to the moon, but he had to just stay in orbit and wait to pick the guys up after the mission was complete. And I just think like that kind of resonated with me. There's people that don't get the spotlight. When people think of that first moon landing, they're not even one of the first two that come to mind. Like, but yet they had a significant part to play, and if their part wasn't done to perfection, the mission would have failed. And I think sometimes we tend to put people in that spotlight and think that the weight that they carry is more. And I'm in the church setting, I'm a pastor right now, and like on a Sunday morning, Pastor Dave gets up and he speaks a message, and we got a worship team and they're doing their thing. But there's every Sunday, our church has about 140 people that are greeting, helping in the kids ministry, helping people find parking spots, and doing all these different things. We all play a part. And I think it's silly that sometimes we tend to discredit like the roles that aren't as glamorous. And so I love when there's somebody that does that well and that is an example in that, like you are, which is pretty cool. I just think if you haven't read this, you got to read this. I'll have to send one to you, because I think you would get a lot from it. I think it's like you live it out and embody it, so you're not going to learn much from it, but it'll just, remind you of some things.
Yeah, no, you're always learning, but that is cool. It's yeah, I think it's just a unique perspective, like I said, like when everyone's connected and people, understand their value and their worth in the group, like, and you've got relationship with people, man, just, I don't know, cool things can happen, in whatever it is, the church, in our locker room work. I really believe that.
For sure. I think one of the unique things too about, where you're at and in the NFL is the camaraderie and family of a locker room. And maybe you tell me, but I feel maybe it's even more in college. But just that unique kind of dynamic of like being family with people that aren't blood. Like I think the friendships go deep. What has kind of been that for you? Obviously you've been away from family for, gosh, almost a decade now. Like you haven't been living in your house doing that routine. So what has kind of that been like? And especially moving across the country, moving to a new place where you don't really know a ton of people. How has that process gone?
Yeah, it's been awesome. And like I said, you're from people all over the country. Shoot, we got a couple guys that grew up in Canada. We have CJ Okoye, is from Africa. His first time in the United States was this past year. He's been in our locker room for a year. Like, so you're just around like awesome people. And so that's a lot of fun, is to learn, what life is like for people all over the place and their experiences. And I don't know, you can just learn so much from guys and their experiences, their perspectives. And everybody's college experience wasn't North Dakota State, and so my first time in the NFL locker room and realizing like, oh wait, some people aren't as passionate and as excited about where they played because of certain, factors, experiences, whatever, that I am. Like, oh man, like, made me appreciate my experiences in Fargo even more, because I said, wow, it really isn't like this everywhere. And so, and then you get guys as you go that played on different NFL teams and have different experiences. They've been cut, they've been traded, they spent a season away from their family, because they have young kids that are in school and didn't want to move them. And so you've got all kinds of things going on.
Right.
And I just think it provides like a really cool experience, and challenges your thoughts and stuff. Like, man, I've gone into conversations like feeling like, man, I really don't disagree, or I really disagree. And then by the end of it, like, oh wow, like I've never thought of it like that at all. That's really neat. Like maybe I need to, look at this differently. And so that part of it's been really fun. The hard part is where it's different from college, where you're living with your buddies for 4 or 5 years. Now it's a little different now, I guess, with maybe the transfer portal and stuff. But when I played, it was like, man, we lived together for 4 or 5 years. You do everything together.
Right.
You're really like truly like a nuclear family, essentially. We're now in the NFL. I remember my rookie year, the locker next to me, shoot, I probably had 15 different people in that locker, just throughout the year. And it's like you get close with guys, for a year or two, and then their contract's up and they move on, or cuts, trades, all that stuff. And so learning to, I don't know, reintroduce yourself and build new relationships yearly is a challenge, but also part of the fun. So I feel really fortunate. I've learned a ton.
I feel like that aspect of the volatility piece, of like just the relationships is unique. Obviously we both know Carson, and Carson had 5 years of stability in Philadelphia and then has been in a new place, and he's got a family, he's got young kids, and he's doing all of this. When you think of, obviously you've been in the same locker room, but you just came back from training camp, you got a bunch of new teammates. Like, how do you go about investing in those relationships and building those friendships? And I just want to comment on something you said too. You said, you went into a conversation like, I disagree with this person. And then by the end of the conversation, you're like, oh man, there's some good points to be had here. And I think we're even coming up on an election year. And it's like, I think if we had some more of those conversations, we might not change our mind on everything, but we would embrace and love the people that are around us a little bit more if we took those opportunities. So what's that been like, and how have you gone about that?
Yeah, I think it's just taking the time to, it's so simple, to sit down and have a meal with somebody. You sit there in the cafeteria, and instead of being on your phone, sit there and talk, have a conversation. You're in the locker room. And it's tough because guys got stuff going on. I've got stuff going on. Like, sometimes the last thing you want to do after practice is to sit there in the locker room and have a conversation with people. Like, practice didn't go very well. You're tired. You got things going on at home. You're stressed. Like, everybody can relate to that. Whereas, like, there's always something else you can do, or
Yeah.
feel like you need to be doing. And so just like taking 5 minutes and having a conversation sometimes is really hard, but it's such a simple way to do it. And I don't know. Like I said, I feel really fortunate to be in a locker room because it's almost forced upon you a little bit. Like, I am in a
Yeah.
locker room with, whether I like it or not, every day I come to work, there's 70 guys or whatever in this little space, and so you kind of have that stuff built in. But I really do think, like, we just take more time, to sit there and to have conversations that, cool things can happen from it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like one of the memories that I have too of you, I meant to say this earlier, but when we had the AO1 softball games, you came back to play. At least, did you play in a few of those bad boys?
Played in two of them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I just remember, like, obviously everybody's having a blast, and it was offense versus defense, and everybody, it was kind of like a family reunion for you guys. But I just remember, I had to run out and do something, and you just walked down the line and you signed every autograph. You not only signed the autographs and took the pictures, but I was taken aback by the fact that you made eye contact with everybody that you interacted with. And I kind of made a mental note of that, and I was like, that's cool, because I mean, you don't have to do that. You're hanging with your buddies, and so I just wanted to say that, just because I think you are an incredible example to people, and I really, I know I'm an old man and you're still a young buck, but I look up to you. Like, you're the real deal, man, and I'm just grateful to know you, and I just know that whatever position you're in, like, you're aware of your influence and who you are, and God's making a difference through your life. So I just wanted to give you some kudos, my friend.
No, I appreciate you saying that. That's really nice. And we could go back and forth doing this. I could say the same thing about you. You're on that list. And I talk about people that had a huge impact on me, and just the way you live your life, and with your family, and all you've done with the ministry stuff, going back to when you were on campus at North Dakota State and AO1, and back now, in the area. So you're doing awesome stuff, and leading a cool family in multiple different ways. So I could say the same about you.
Well, I appreciate that. Hey, we got one more question. Actually, before we get to our one last question, I think, there's people that want to know. I think you get to, your new coach is kind of a legend. He just won the national championship for college football. So what has that been like with Coach Harbaugh?
It's been 2 weeks, so it's early, but I probably have a ton of stories to tell already. It's been a lot of fun, and it's neat because you hear all these things. About people, whatever, but particularly him, I guess, in the last year, because of the success and all that. And you hear, how much he loves football and how much the players love him and all this stuff. And it's like, that's been my experience in 2 weeks. Like we came in and we got to football immediately, faster than any coaching staff I've been on. There wasn't like introduction, like, hey, stand up, how are you? Like it was like, here's football. And he's up there like teaching and his hands on, and he's in everybody's room. He's bouncing in and out of rooms, every position. Like you can truly sense the passion that he has for the game and for the guys. Like he has a ton of respect for it. So that's been a ton of fun. I know the guys have loved the first couple weeks, and so I'm sure I'll have a bunch of stories by the end of the year. But it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I mean, the guy's living in an RV right now, so that's pretty legendary.
No doubt. Legendary.
All right. So here's the last question. If you were to go back and give 22-year-old Easton some advice, and we're right around the NFL draft right now. So this is probably around the time that you got drafted, maybe 22, 23. But what advice would you give him?
Yeah, geez, that is good. That's tough. Because I'm graduating or finishing football at least in Fargo and hoping to transition to the NFL about this time. And I would say the best thing I could have told myself back then is just be present and try to enjoy it. And don't get anxious and worried about stuff down the road. Just be really present and be where your feet are at, and let that kind of guide you. Don't drift. I just think like, anytime there's transition early, I'll say in my experience, when there's been transition in my life, like the easy thing to do is like to stress out and to worry about like I have to move here in a few months, our new facility's being built, and I'll like catch myself like, at a workout, like start thinking about that. And I'm like, you just get stressed and anxious. I'm like, there's no benefit to doing that. Be where you're at. At that point, it's like, don't worry about where you're going to be, what opportunities you're going to have. It's like, man, if you can be your best every single day and just worry about, one thing at a time, where you're at, how you're treating people, like it's going to work out. God has a plan for all of it. We just like to get there and muddy it up on our own, so that's what I would say, is just be present.
Dude, love it. Great advice. You nailed it. Well, hey, again, thanks Easton for taking some time, hanging out. It was fun to catch up with you. And I just appreciate you. Pumped for everything going on in your life and be following those Chargers again this year. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on.